So first we start with the names of the sons of Jacob, the nation who are going to become the nation of Israel. There's a famous Gemara that said that because we kept our names, we kept our identity throughout the exile, throughout all these years in Egypt. Because of that, that's the reason for us that we were able to be redeemed. That if we were, God forbid, to take on Egyptian names, they're also probably very funny names these days, so I'm happy we kept our Hebrew names. But if we were to keep, if we were not keeping our names, we wouldn't be able to be saved. So that's one explanation why we're calling it Shemot, which literally translates as names, the book of Exodus. The second explanations, which I want to bring to light based on this this week's wonders, is Shemot could also be the name of Hashem that we have in Shemot and in Va'era, in those Parshiot. We have a lot of emphasis on God's names, that God is revealed by his names. So it's very important to connect to those different names. We know that the main book, that the first book in let's say the deepest book that Rabbi Ginsburgh wrote is Sod Hashem Le'irav, which is a book about God's name, which has 4 letters, the Yud K Vav K. But before we go into all that, we'll do a couple introductions and say a couple things. First, we do these shiurim for very strong health to our Rav Yitzchak ben Breina Malka, and our friend Bluma bat Ginen del Tova, and my son Levi Ovia ben Ayala. They should all be very healthy and strong. And this parasha really starts. We start connecting as a nation. We connect to every Jew. So we hope that every Jew will be strong and healthy, and that's very important to us. Also, the past week, Baruch Hashem, we have in Jerusalem, we have schools, both boys' schools and girls' schools, the Talmud Torah, that are connected to the Rav. So they had a evening of chinuch where there was many shiurim given. One of them was by the Rav, and he and it was brought in this week's wonders. So that's something we're going to start on. Also, coming up this week is the yahrzeit of our Alter Rebbe, which we all connect to the Torah that the Alter Rebbe wrote, and that brought Chabad in general. So it's a very very important week for us. So the shiur that the Rav gave had to do with a very famous Yom Yom, where the Yom Yom brings that the Rebbe Rashab said that just like it's important for a Jew to put on tefillin, and it's a very important mitzvah, and we all connect to it, and it doesn't matter if you're a very important Jew or a simple Jew or whatever place you are, it's an important mitzvah. Same to the mitzvah of sitting down for 30 minutes every day and thinking about our children and the chinuch that we want to give them, that has the same importance. He compared those two mitzvahs, and we know how much Chabad cares about going out and putting on the tefillin for people, and this mitzvah is compared on that level. Now it is crucial and important to understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to sit down and think about ways to improve our chinuch. It's so important, and it's a mitzvah that has women and men at the same time. Before marriage and later on in the years, you can think about more chinuch. Chinuch was also one of the Mivtzoim, one of the things that the Rebbe wanted to emphasize. So we know that today chinuch is all over. You can do a class on Zoom and have chinuch all over the world. So it's very important to connect to that. But 30 minutes a day, we need to contemplate on chinuch and how we can improve chinuch. So in this class that Rabbi Ginsburgh gave for our schools, he focused on what do you think during those times? What is the essence of chinuch? What are you trying to portray to the children and in general? What is so important that you have to think about? What is chinuch? So what he explained is, first of all, when we put the Mivtzoim of the Rebbe, and I won't go into it that deeply, but when Rabbi Ginsburgh put them together in what's called a Partzuf, where he put them in with the Sfirot, with the different Sfirot, he put the Chinuch in victory, in Netzach. And again, we're not going to go into it, but the point is, we win. We have the power to win with our Chinuch. We know that we just passed Hanukkah, which is the main victory that we've had. We were so few and weak, and we still won. And it's the holiday also of Chinuch. Our victory, our ability to win is through Chinuch. And what is Chinuch? What are we trying to portray? We're trying to portray bitachon, which is the inner part, confidence. The inner part of Netzach is being confident, to portray confidence to the children. That if someone is confident, if a child is confident that he can win, that he can be successful, that he can do and accomplish, then he would want to do and accomplish. And we know, and this we know from the explanation about the Frierdiker Rebbe's Ma'amar Chinuch V'Adracha, where he explains it in many details, that the Chinuch, the initial part of Chinuch, is to develop the desire, the want, the ratzon within kids. We spoke about it maybe a couple months ago. But how do we make someone want? What makes people want something? The fact that they think that they could achieve it. And that part, teaching our children that they can achieve something, that they are capable. And obviously, together with bitachon, with confidence, we teach confidence in Hashem. Chas v'shalom, that we think that we can do something. Self-confidence in a simple manner. Now, bitachon is very close to self-confidence. Yes, we have self-confidence, but that only comes because we're connected to Hashem. That is the explanation of confidence. But for this sake, the main thing that we're trying to show our children is that Hashem is with them, and they can achieve, they can accomplish. And with that, once we really show them that, then they can run out and go and want to do things and achieve things. And we need, for 30 minutes a day, every day, to think how we can portray this to the children, how we can get them on route, how we can give them tasks that they can accomplish, how we can steer them towards things that they can do, so that they develop this confidence, this bitachon, in Hashem and in themselves, and with that they would want to do things. So that's very important. I will say a side note that I think that also in many other angles that we do, as of course as a teacher, but also as a manager of any kind. If you have if a person has, let's say, a business, or a person has a charity type of foundation, or a person has anything we do, we also need to think the same way. We need a good amount of time. This is not always chinuch, so it doesn't necessarily have to be 30 minutes a day, but a good amount of time every day to think how we can move something forward. And the way we can move something forward is by doing. How we can convince people and convince the people around us that they will be successful, that it could be achieved, whatever the goal is that we're trying to achieve. And once we are able to show them that, then Be'ezrat Hashem, they would want to do it, and then they would be successful in it. Now, what is the main thing that we do want to achieve? Where do we want to be? We want Geulah, we want Mashiach, we want redemption at the end of the day. We want Hashem to be in this world, to have a mikdash in this world, to have a good place, to have a home in this world. Dira b'tachtonim, a place in this world with all its complications. So one of the things that Rabbi Ginsburgh teaches us is very important to show the children is that they can go and they can fail. Let's say they can go into Galus, which is this whole book of Exodus. At the end of the day, once we start by Galus, and we'll continue talking about it in the next part of this week's wonders. But at the end of the day, going down into Galus and failing at the end of the day and coming out of that failure and achieving what's called Yeridat Tzorech Aliyah, going down in order to come up at the end of the day, having Galut in order to have Geulah, to be at the end of the day, in order to be redeemed, you need to fail. And teaching that and having confidence even through failures is part of chinuch, is what we want to teach our children, to be able to fail. And that is crucial. Fail with confidence in Hashem, confidence in oneself, that at the end of the day, Hashem will help me and I will achieve something from this failure. That every time when we talk about going down to this world, going down to any galut, we always say that what you achieve after you fail is much better than where you were before you started the process. Our Lubavitch Rebbe would always say that it's better to do something and fail than not do anything, which is a decision. It's a Chabad way. We have this week the Alter Rebbe's Yortzeit, but at the end of the day, it's the Chabad way. In order to achieve, you want to do and fail. If need be, you will fail. We will all fail. That's fine. Because at the end of the day, there will be Geulah. We believe in Geulah. And that is Chinuch. Chinuch is that we will be victorious, Netzach, victory, but we will be victorious after we go through whatever we need to go through. So that's the first part where Rav Ginsburgh gave. There was a bunch of other remazim and other things within this class that we had for our schools, but I thought this point we do want to bring in. So that was the first part of this week's wonders, and I know people have heard that we have now wonders in English. It's not exactly the same, which is, Be'ezrat Hashem, it should also be translated, but anyone that can should really go over every week. Amazing wonders. In the second part, we're going back to names. What happens in this parasha? Moses meets God. He meets a Kadosh Baruch Hu, which is amazing. It's the whole process of this parasha is phenomenal. That Moshe goes into Galus. Pharaoh runs after him, tries to kill him, and he runs away. And he's in Galus, and he's a shepherd. He watches over the sheep, and then one sheep runs off, and he runs after the sheep, and he finds a burning bush, the Sneh Boer, and that's where God reveals himself and speaks to him. And one of the things that God tells him is, and Moshe asks God, what name? What should I tell them? Who are you? Who's the God that's coming to save them? And Hashem says, Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. That's part of the pasuk, which is God's name, which is literally, if we want to translate, which is very hard to translate God's name, but I will be what I will be, which is very hard to understand. And not only that it's hard for him to understand, he right away tells him that go tell the nation of Israel, I will be with you. meaning only one name. The Chazal teach us that what he wanted to say within that is there will be a Geulah, I will redeem you, but then afterwards there will be another Galus. We're going to go in a cycle. And Moshe said to God, no, we'll deal with the second Galus later. Right now we're in a tough spot. So he said, okay, that's the Gemara. But the simple explanation is that God is revealing himself in a certain way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, in general, when we're talking in this part in the whole book of Exodus, we're talking about Galut, we're talking about exile in general. It always is looked upon as turning back, meaning you can face someone face to face, look at someone, as they say, in the eyes, be in the same place, and then you can basically be back to back. That's in Kabbalah, it's a way of looking at everything in life. Is it face to face? Are you looking at something the way you should be? Or is it something that's back to back where it's really everyone is looking at a different direction? When we have Galut, when we're going into exile, the basic concept is it will be back to back. What is it like? It is like the main explanation of exile is our neshama. That before our neshama, before it went down to this world, it was with Hashem, facing Hashem, being able to enjoy and be part of Hashem. And then when it's going down to this world, it's as if it turned around. And now it's achor, it's turning its back on Hashem. Chas v'shalom, obviously it's not literally, but at the end of the day, it's separating. So that's something that we have to look upon, is what do we gain by doing this, by turning our back. So before we go into all that, we'll introduce the two stories of this week's wonders. Two stories about our Alter Rebbe in the first years of him being a Rebbe, and the two stories. The first story is that one time he was a rabbi, he was a simple rav, and they invited him to a wedding, to be part of the wedding, to do the brachot and everything that the rabbi does at the wedding. And he said, I understand why you have a badchan at the wedding, why you have someone making jokes at the weddings to make everyone happy. That's understandable, but what do you need a rav for? What do you need a rabbi at the wedding? To read the script? You can have someone else read the script. What is a rabbi good for at a wedding? That's what he asked. And everyone didn't understand. And he said, a rabbi is good for something because a rabbi investigates everything. And he started asking questions, and he asked the bride if her first husband, she was married and then he passed away, if he had a brother. And he said, yeah, he had a brother, but he was very little. He says, wait, if he had a brother, then you will need chalitza. This wedding cannot happen until that brother does the whole chalitza, takes off the shoe, and then the whole mahalach of, because I'll just say in 2 words that simply in one of the mitzvot is that if a brother passes away, then one of the brothers comes in and marries the wife of the brother. This way, the name of the brother is not forgotten. We're speaking about names. His name is not being forgotten. But what happens if they don't want? If they don't want to marry the widow, basically they would have to do a chalitza. In any case, in this story, first of all, the Alter Rebbe revealed himself as being really, when he knows what to investigate. That's a miracle on its own. But second, he showed that a real Rav investigates something and is very involved. Rav in Hebrew is connected to the word me'orav, which is mixed up, involved. So a real Rav is someone that's very involved with what's happening around him or in where he's at or in his community. That's the first story. The second story is a very nice story that Rabbi Hillel, the famous Chassid, we spoke about him, of the Alter Rebbe, would always, every year, he would ask the same person on Yud Tes Kislev, he would ask him to say how he connected to the Alter Rebbe. What was the story of his connection to the Alter Rebbe? And he would say every year, he would say, I was not connected to Chassidut, the opposite. I was a mitnaged, I was against Chassidut. But I married a daughter of a Chassid, of one of the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. And my father-in-law really wanted me to connect to the Alter Rebbe. And every time I would tell him, listen, I can't go, it's a Bitul Torah, I will not be able to study, and I need to study, I need to focus, I can't go with you to meet your Rebbe. And that was my excuse, and that's how he got away with it. However, this Chassid went and cried to the Alter Rebbe. And this was in the beginning days. The Alter Rebbe was so connected to every person that he went, and the next time he told him that the next time that I'll come to your house, you should invite your Chatan, you should invite him over. And really he came to this place and stayed by this Chassid. And he told him, okay, now you can invite your Chatan over. And he went, so this Chassid went ahead and called his new son-in-law and said, you got to come. My Rav is right here. You're not going to have to waste any study time. In a few minutes, you can just walk in and walk out. But since this guy did not want to, he basically said no. So once he said no, the Chassid got that he has to do something extreme. So he asked two friends, and they caught this guy. They took him, they strong-armed him and took him right in. But he was not going to give up that easy. So he was sitting inside the room looking at the door, just not looking at the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe asked him, do you know how to study? And still looking at the door, he said, I know how to study, and I don't need you, and I don't need your teaching. Wow, very, very strong. He says, well, what about Yirat Shamayim? He said it in a way of in the limud way, the way the Gemara says it, is that every time you have crop, you have wheat, you have to, when you're storing it in those days, you have to put a special type of salt in order so that mice will not eat your wheat. So the same way, if you're learning Torah, you have to have Yirat Shamayim with it. You have to learn about Hashem and about Musar. You have to have sensitivity or awe of Hashem in order to be able to keep your Torah. That's from the Gemara. So he asked him, what about that? And he said, okay, I have that, well, what is it? A couple minutes a day I learn also things that have to do with Hashem, with Yirat Shamayim. It's fine, I'm good. He said, but it says you have to mix it. And when the Alter Rebbe said that, this guy who is now turned to be a Chassid turned around, looked at him and said, I'm yours. What does that mean? What was so special? What was the talk between them? He told them, do you have this, do you study about Hashem? He said, yeah, I do. He said, but that doesn't help. Having a little bit of salt at the end of your field will not help your wheat not to be eaten. You have to mix it. You have to have it everywhere. And mixing it requires special learning. And that's part of our Torah, that we have to have Hashem everywhere. And that's how we keep our Torah from getting lost. And when he said that, he bought this Chassid. What does that have to do with us? It has to do with the same thing that we said about a Rav, that is involved, gets the things mixed up, gets everyone gets to the right places to mix things up in order for Hashem to be everywhere. So we really have to contemplate about how to be involved. Rabbi Ginsburgh explains that when being involved doesn't mean you're gonna be good word for it. Let's call it, doesn't mean you're gonna bother the person. Let's say, for example, you want to be involved in your kid's life. It doesn't mean you should be part of every piece. You should know everything. You should be involved in the way of understanding and being able to guide, but it doesn't mean that you're going to basically interrupt things. Being involved without interrupting, the opposite. If you interrupt and everything you do, you try to take away, if you be involved in a way that really takes over, then that's not going to help. It's going to destroy the ability of, whether it's our children or other co-workers or whatever employees, you can't interrupt. You can be involved, but you can't take away the ability of the person to do something. That's very, very important. But at the end of the day, you have to be involved. That's something that we take very strongly, that a person has to be involved. You have to be involved with your community. You have to be involved with, in general, with the Jewish people, with the world. That if you want to be a Rav, you have to be involved. Now, taking a step back, the way we started is we asked the question is, what's so important about exile, about Galut? Why do we want to be turning around from Hashem? What do we learn from it? So the word that we're going to use is achar or achor, which is turning our back in general, but it has 3 letters, Aleph, Chet, and Reish. So those 3 letters, Rav Ginzburgh teaches us there are 3 concepts. Adam, which is a person, knowing every person, Chaver, a friend, and Rav, in simple sense, it could be a Rav, a rabbi, but it could also be a teacher. So there are 3 levels. There's everyone, there's our friends, and there's our teacher. So those are the things that help us, even when we're turned around, to overcome it and be able to overcome our failures and overcome our exile, our galut, and be able to be redeemed, Geulah. What else do we learn from this word? We'll talk about it a little bit more, but first, what else do we learn from this achor, turning around? Achor sounds like the same word in Hebrew, achrayut, responsibility. When you're face to face with Hashem, you don't take responsibility. Hashem is responsible for everything. It's like a father and son, that the father steps back in order for the son to take responsibility. So when we're turned around, when we're going away from Hashem, when we're going into this world or into exile or into anything we do, we're faced with challenges and we have to take responsibility. That's also, we learn this from the word achor. Where do we see that especially? We see that by Abraham. What does it say? Achar devarim haeleh. Achar also means after these things, but also could mean achor. Va'elokim nisa et Abraham, and God tested Abraham. That the test, a real ability to choose, that when you turn back, achor is aleph chet reish. If you go right after aleph, there's base, the second letter. Bachar, bet chet reish, is to choose. So again, being able to choose is only when you're turned back, when you're away from Hashem or from any parent or any teacher, etc. But what is the goal of being away? The goal is to be connected to Hashem. We'll say that when you're connected to Hashem, that's more like God's knowledge. We said that there's the knowledge, the understanding of Hashem, and there's our free will, our ability to choose. The goal of our choices, that you should go after Hashem. What does that mean? That your decision should be God's decision. Should be, you decide based on what Hashem wants you to decide. one of the ways we as Jews make decisions is we ask, what does God want? And we make our decision based on the knowledge, on the understanding, on the connection with Hashem. Now, what does the Mishnah say? In Pirkei Avot, the Mishnah says, Aseh lecha rav, everyone should have himself a rav, ukneh lecha chaver, kneh from the word to buy, you should get yourself a friend, ve'eved dan et kol ha'adam lekav zchut. But at the end, what's the end goal? To judge everyone favorably. It sounds like the friend and the rabbi help you judge everyone favorably. Why is it so important to judge everyone favorably? Because when you judge everyone favorably, you're able to do good deeds. If chas v'shalom, you think people are doing bad things, people are part of a community, they feel like if other people are doing bad things, then I can also connect to these things or do bad things. We don't want that. We want to judge everyone favorably so we can do good deeds and elevate everyone. So how do we do that? We connect to our Rav and our friend. Our friend helps us, elevates us to be able to ask the Rav the right questions. Again, but all of these we learn from the word acher or achor, aleph chet reish, which is the basic concept of turning around, which is what's happening in this book of Exodus. Sefer Shemot starts with turning around. Everything, the old way of doing things vanishes, and the new way of being in exile starts. What do we gain from this? We gain the ability to choose, to take responsibility, to connect with our friends, to be led by, in this case, Be'ezrat Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, our leader, but also every generation has a Moshe, but also all the real rabbis are also connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. So all of this comes from the ability to turn around, from Galut. If we want to do it in worlds, there's 4 worlds: Atzilut, Bri'ah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. We won't explain them in many details, but the highest level, the highest world, is you're able to connect to Hashem. There's no turning around. But when you turn around, the first world is Bri'ah, is creation. That is the world where you need a rabbi in order to help you create. And then Yetzirah is where you have a friend. And finally, Asiyah, this world, is where you have to judge everyone favorably. That's this world that we live in. In general, what is a friend? There's a Yom Yom that says that it was actually a couple days ago, that when 2 Jews, 2 souls connect, it's 2 nefesh elok, it's 2 souls of Hashem, versus 1 nefesh behemoth, versus 1 nefesh, which connects to our basic instinct. Now, again, the nefesh behemoth has a couple names to it. Either you can call it the animal or the base or the nefesh behemoth, tiv'it v'chiyunit. So those names, they connect to our basic interests and instincts. Within us, we know in Tanya, and this is not something I wanted to speak about a lot, but we know in Tanya that there's 2 nefashim, nefesh elokit and nefesh be'emit. There's 2 ways to look at things in life, for our sake, in order to understand. You could look at things from what do I need, my interest, and you can look at things, what does God want? In order for us to connect to this year, we'll look at things in that way. So what happens when 2 Jews connect? They're both looking at what Hashem wants, and there's only one basic interest, because the interests do not align. You can't connect 2 nefesh behemoths. You can't connect 2 people necessarily to have the same interest in the basic instinct. They're 2 separate people. Each time you can look at it, but you can connect. God's way connects the 2. When in Tanya, when it says nefesh elokit, it says nefesh hashenit, the second. Rabbi Ginsburgh said it's a good way to look at it, but it always connects, because when you're looking at it from God's perspective, everything connects. when you're looking from this world, there's only one interest at a time. Connecting with people has to be based on Hashem, based on God's will, or connecting to Hashem. We see that with Lavan, when our father Jacob was with the shepherd of Lavan, he said that Hatufim, the one that covered themselves, in the simple sense, the sheep that were covered were for Lavan. That's someone that covers himself, tries to take care of himself. Vakshurim, the one that were tied, LeYaakov, because when you're connecting to Hashem, you're also connecting to everyone around you. Versus when you're trying to take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people at the same time. It never aligns. Even when people think that they can align interests, yes, interests align, but only for a short period, either of time or up until a certain point. It doesn't 100% connect. There's never a real connection. Real connection only happens by the Nefesh Elokit. Now, we see that also in Machatzit Shekel, that every time when we donate to the Beit Midrash, we donate half a shekel, because we always want to say that we need someone else to connect to. We see, this is amazing, that within connection, even there was a time that by Migdal Bavel, that mankind wanted to build a very high tower to rebel against God. But what the psukim say over there is that since they were connected together, they're going to be successful in whatever they do. Success comes from connection. Even this is an amazing chidush, that even by evil people, if you're really connected, if you're connecting, then you're going to be able to achieve something. Because good comes from connection. So the ability to connect is the ability to create. And we can see that the nature of Nefesh Eloki, our nature is to connect. But the simple nature, that's love. Real love comes from Hashem. Versus Maito, Yira, or sensitivity to places, that is the part that the Nefesh Bahamis can connect to, that our simple inclination. But again, what we're trying to say is that the reason that we're turning around, that we're going into exile, that we're going down to this world, that this whole galus that we're at, is in order to be able to be elevated and turned around on a much higher level. And that elevation happens when we take a good friend and connect to a good Rav, and at the end of the day, judge everyone favorably. That is the secret to be able to uplift everything to Geulah. That was the second shiur in this week's Wonders. I see that we will not have time to do any more. There's a lot more to look at the different names of Hashem, which is mainly this week's Wonders.